Energy. It is all around us, both seen and unseen. It affects all the lives within humanity, our great planet Earth, and the entire universe. It is a conscious cosmic matrix, an ever-evolving cycle, creating, breaking down, and recreating. This is Connected with your host, Andrea Dragonfly. Andrea tells us that energy is the foundation of our human experience, intrinsically affecting every facet of our lives, our perceptions, choices, and actions, as well as the challenges, opportunities, and people we attract. So now, please welcome the host of Connected, Andrea Dragonfly.
Hey, good people. Welcome. I'm your host, Andrea Dragonfly, and this is the show Connected. And in this show, we talk about how everything in our life is connected, that there are no coincidences. So, for the last several weeks, we've been talking about karma, and especially karma with kind of intimate relationships, as well as just these different types of casual encounters and these connections that we have where we can either create karma, heal karma, or something in between, right? So I'm going to do a quick review and look at what we were talking about last week and how we're going to tie that into this week's show. And then from there, we're going to move ourselves into a deeper exploration of who we are, and how we are a product of our environment and where all of that comes from as well. So everything is connected. So last week we were talking about different types of encounters, and sometimes we have these even familial encounters. We were talking about definitely sex and non-consented experiences. And we're looking at karma from a place where karma, again, is the third law of motion. And in that law of motion, it means that the energy that is put out will actually come back to us in equal and let me see if I get my words out, equal and at an opposite effect back at us. So if we have certain types of intentions that we are putting out into the world towards other people, even if they're harmful, so harmful and cruel and those types of things, that somewhere within our experience, we're going to experience that right back at us. So again, it's going to come back at the same depth and the same intensity. And so whatever we put out is going to come back in. So it's really a law of action and reaction. And so it really also is kind of a way that we take responsibility for our lives. So when we start to become aware of karma and how we are living our lives, we begin to make subtle shifts and changes because we can also bring positive karma to us. When we start to do good things, those random acts of kindness for others, then we begin to start receiving those random acts of kindness for ourselves. So again, it's that law of action, reaction. Whatever we're putting out there is going to come back at us at equal energy, and within the opposite effect coming back at us. And so within that, this is a way that we begin to become conscious of how we participate in life. And then as we're on this mass conscious expansion within humanity right now, of course, many of you who are watching this are already like, yes, I'm creating good karma. I'm even watching this show. I'm learning. I'm expanding my awareness by growing myself in what is the energy around me, right? But it's also that place where we can come into deeper unconditional love, compassion, and forgiveness, which is, you hear me talk about this a lot, right? Because this is part of that human experience. And even getting back to karma, in how do we, when do we experience it? Because oftentimes we can experience it in this lifetime, or we may find out, like, we may have to go through another incarnation before that comes back to us. So, in that way, I want to do a quick review because I did talk about this earlier in the show. And so, just to kind of refresh your memory, and of course, repetition is always good. And again, if you already know a lot about karma and I'm speaking about it a little bit differently than you are familiar with, I invite you to try it on. There's so many ways we can talk about these different concepts. So add it to what you already know, take what feels right, discard what doesn't, but really allow it to sit with you and work with you. And that's just what this show is all about, right? And so when we think about just our human experience, we have what we know as life to death. In our life to death experience, this is what most of us were actually taught, is that we have this one life experience and it's all we get, and we want to do the best we can with it because, this is your chance, right? And of course, a lot of the dominant religions, which are through the Abrahamic traditions. So it's going to be Christianity, Judaism, Islam, even. Those three dominant religions really believe in the one life theory, where you get one shot at life. And then afterwards, how you kind of did in that lifetime will either bring you to heaven, bring you to, of course, I'm using Christianity because that's what I'm most familiar with, to this place of like purgatory in between heaven and what would also be considered hell, or you could go down into the hell realm, right? Well, that is a very new actual ideology or a new kind of belief system in the trajectory of humanity. And so it was definitely a way for us to actually become good citizens. And the true teachings that we're not really being taught much of that these days, because of course the Bible has been, kind of written according to, who had the power and the authority at that time. And so a lot of these Bible translations, and of course there's wonderful passages and a lot of information that can certainly grow us, but it also was very selective as to what they put in and how they've taken out a lot of different very important concepts that are now resurfacing, saying, hey, guess what? There is a different way. And all the other belief systems around the world throughout time have also had a relationship with reincarnation. And so I'm working with the theosophy, I'm working with anthroposophy, I'm working with Rosicrucian energy. This is a lot of some of the hidden esoteric teachings. And again, esoteric is just where we have this information. It's often hidden. It's not easily accessible because for a long time, for the last few thousand years, it had been sought out to be destroyed because of how they wanted to shift, the mindsets of the people of the different civilizations that were coming. Well, what we do know through esoteric wisdom, and this is a lot of the ancient mystery schools, is that, which come all the way back through Rome and Greece and Egypt, and even earlier into the early Vedics of the Hindu belief systems and the Eastern philosophies. So, it holds a lot of richness. And even today, the Eastern philosophies are very, very connected to reincarnation. And so what we look at is through that life to death experience. We come in for a human experience that is going to be brought with challenges. It's part of the human design. No matter what your family is, and we're going to be talking about family today, is that even if it was the most amazing family that you could have ever been, born into, you're still going to have challenges of life. Things are still going to come towards us for us to have an opportunity for our own greater growth, understanding. Oftentimes it comes back to that unconditional love, that compassion, that forgiveness, right? And so when we were talking last week about how we can also be in these family dynamics or these relational dynamics, these different types of encounters, even with strangers and people we haven't met before, there also is this moment where, something happens. And of course, it's about disempowerment. There's something that has happened that takes us out of our power. And so when we go through these different life incarnations, we are given these opportunities. So even if you had the best life, you still have opportunities. But if you have a challenged life, and we all have them, they're just at different varying degrees, we have these different opportunities to bring ourselves back into balance. So karma really is this energetic of bringing us back into balance. And we can accrue really good karma and continue to shift and change and evolve our awareness into recognizing that everything that happens in life is really important for the greater growing of humanity, right? Because we're all given these different opportunities and we're all going to react or respond to them differently. And that's part of our growth. And so when we go through our life to death process, we're always presented with some of these very thematic obstacles throughout our lifetime, because it really wants us to be able to recognize that, hey, if I've been disempowered in this area, I'm going to have ample opportunity to really reclaim my power again. And this is how we move into that next kind of evolution and that kind of like ascension that many people talk about, spiritual ascension, as we move into this higher place of understanding. And again, that understanding comes with that compassion, that forgiveness. So we are given these opportunities over and over and over again to test us. And even if we think we've done it, we're going to have another opportunity that's going to present itself that says, okay, you think you've healed yourself from this, but have you really healed yourself from this? And then another opportunity will present itself where we have to continue to make that different choice for a period of time until we really get it and we really heal that within ourselves. And then we continue to move on. And as we grow ourselves and as we accumulate good karma, we have less and less of those really heavy lessons to go through, right? When we have some of those heavy karmas, they are either going to present themselves in multiple different ways. Remember that every human being is so unique, and we are just this combination of energy, and I like to call it energy alchemy, where we have our strengths and our weaknesses, and everything's coming together in a way that is going to present itself when we either react or respond to any given situation. So within this place, we're looking at, what is coming our way. When we go through the death to life scenario again, so this is the next phase, the next stage after we die, and that incarnation, we leave behind our body, we leave behind, some of these different energy bodies. The astral body goes up and processes everything that we've encountered in our life. Who have we been? How have we treated other people? How have we been treated by other people? And we get to feel it really deeply. And so it's part of our karma. It's part of our understanding and our coming into understanding how to work with these different energy dynamics. And then afterward, so the astral energy is part of that soul. And again, that soul is that navigation device that takes us to the people, places, events, situations for us to be presented with the opportunity. When we release the soul, we go back into spirit form, and it's a time for recuperation. It's a time to be with these beings, our creator beings that have helped form us in the beginning. And this is where we can begin to negotiate, more or less. We can see it many different ways. So if you see it differently, by all means, it's okay. But this is where we kind of negotiate what our next incarnation is going to look like. And so within that next incarnation, this is also where we begin to look at what's the family dynamic going to be. And so within that family dynamic, it's really based on what are we looking at learning? What do we need to overcome? If we haven't balanced our last incarnation, then we're going to have a life for the next incarnation that's going to give us the opportunity to rebalance that, bring it back into some place of harmony, or give us an opportunity for us to really know deeply the depth of the lesson, of the experience, because within the depth of these really hard lessons is an extraordinary conscious and spiritual gift. And we may not ever see it like that when we're in our personality form. So we're looking at the difference between personality and our soul spirit energy. And we're going to take a quick break. And when we get back from that break, we're going to dive into looking at this more deeply and how this all plays out within our family dynamic, the people that, our environment, where we grew, what our culture is, all of that stuff. And we'll go ahead and flesh all of that out. So I'll see you back here in just a couple minutes.
What if there were a super tiny device that could diagnose the brain and is smaller than a single human hair? What if you could see inside the brain to help an epilepsy patient during surgery or to help the fight against Parkinson's disease? Dr. Patricia Broderick is proud to announce the Broderick Probe, a biomedical and electronic breakthrough. Imagine a probe to help with the understanding and potential cure of brain-related diseases. To learn more, listen live to the Easy Sense radio show with host Dr. Broderick, Wednesdays 7 p.m. Eastern on the Bold Brave Media Network and TuneIn Radio. And to help support the Broderick Foundation, please go to EasySense.com and learn how, with your help, we can fight these horrific brain disorders. That's EasySense.com to learn more and help support the Broderick Foundation. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness: Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals. Listen to John Hawkins' My Strategy, Saturdays, 1 p.m. Eastern on the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio.
Okay, welcome back. And I also want to just remind you that this is a live show and that at the bottom of the screen is the phone number. So if you have any desire to call in, or if you're on Facebook or any of the media sites and you want to type in a question, we can certainly also pull it up and I can answer it, or we can also include you in part of this conversation. So by all means, please do. We are looking at our family dynamic and we're connecting it to our personal karma. So what I'd like to say is that we have what would be called soul groups. And so when we go through our life to death process, we have these relationships, we connect, right? Everything's about connection. Our lives are all about relationships. Everything about our lives is about our relationship to either other human beings, a relationship to our food, our environment, other, energies that are all around us. So we are living in a very relational experience as human beings. So within this, this life to death experience, we're going to run into people who we've traveled with in previous incarnations. And of course, we're going to meet new people along the way. And so I don't necessarily know the ratio. Like we can look at it, be like, maybe 75% of the people you meet might be new people, and 25% of the people you meet might be people you've traveled with in your soul group. And these soul groups can also be our allies. They could be some of our best friends, or people, or our previous partners, or, people we've had really powerful, beautiful relationships with. And some of these people in our soul group can also be our antagonists. They could have been our enemy. They could have been somebody in which we struggled greatly with, right? And so we have these opportunities. They could have been our perpetrator. They could have been our executioner, our persecutor in some way. And then we're brought back to them in a new incarnation to be able to balance the imbalance that was created in the past life. So now don't quote me. I'm not saying that's 75%, 25%. I don't know. Everybody might be different, right? So within the 8 billion people on the planet plus, who knows that this could be a very, different type of, combination for each being. But it's important for us to know that when we have these karmas, the soul, again, is the one that picks up the energy. It's the energy imprint that brings us to these people, that brings us to these places. So sometimes we are going to be born into a family that may or may not be part of our soul group. Maybe some of the people in the family were part of the soul group from a previous incarnation, and other parts of the family members are not. They might be brand new. We might be coming together for the very first time in that type of dynamic. However, the family dynamic, and I believe I talked about this in the second show, it's about our environment, right? So our personal karma from our last life is also setting us up for what we want to be presented with, at least with the opportunity to overcome in this next life. Or maybe we want, and sometimes it's kind of like if we had any type of oppressive energy in a past life, and by all means, we've gone through the whole gamut. So don't think that you've only been a good person your whole life incarnations. We have to go through all the highs and lows of humanity. We have to know what it's like to be a cruel person in order to know what it's like to be, the victim on the other side, in order for us to evolve and say, you know what, no, that energy is not what it's not what I support. I recognize the significance of it. I recognize why it exists, because those cruel relationships, those cruel energetics are incredibly important for our growth. If we're not comfortable, well, there's a saying through one of my trainings, I think it's my IPEC, Institute for Professional Excellence in Coaching. I think it's Bruce D. Schneider. He talks about if you're if you don't grow, you die. And to some degree, yes, exactly. If we're not growing, we're not thriving, we're not really truly living, we're on our withering, we're heading towards that death process. But also there's this other perspective that it's like through the uncomfortable is where we have the greatest opportunity to grow. And of course, we can grow as well when we're not in the uncomfortable. We can grow and process and really deepen in when we're in a comfortable place in our lives. But it's through those really hard times that we can grow ourselves, exponentially. Exponentially. Let's get that word out. And so it's in those moments that we can be presented with, how are we in this lifetime? What are we calling to us for the next lifetime? And with karma actually works within 3 ways that I'm aware of. And maybe there's more, depending on, so maybe other people talk about it in different ways. But the karma that we're going to accrue is the karma that we're going to get in this lifetime. If we don't complete it in this lifetime, it moves into the next lifetime. So then the karma that we accrue that we'll meet up with again in a future lifetime, a new incarnation. And then some of that karma it will even be passed down through our lineage. So this is an energy karma. And we're going to be talking more about this in a couple of weeks. So these next few shows, we're going to be really talking about the family dynamic. And we're going to be talking about karma within the family, but not just within our kind of little nuclear family, but within our extended family and generations back. And so in 2 shows from now, we're going to be really looking at the generational lineage piece. I'm also going to say that as we move into looking at our family dynamic, next week I'm going to have a guest, a dear friend of mine. She is an incredible spiritual sister in the world. She is a huge part of the Mexican spiritual movement down in she lives in Nayarit, but she's also all around central Mexico in that area. And she's going to talk to us about family constellations. And family constellations is really how we're set up within our family dynamic. Our mother, our father, our siblings, whether there's a stepmother, a stepfather, step siblings, half siblings, if you're adopted, all of that. So we look at the karmic relationship and how each one plays out. So if you have any, curiosity around that, that's going to be our conversation for next week. So definitely come back and join us, and we'll still have the live call in if you have any questions around that, because it's absolutely beautiful and fascinating. And so I'm going to touch on it here, but we're going to dive into it much deeper next week when it comes into the individual dynamics between, the family. So here we're still looking at just coming back from death, now coming back into a new life, a new incarnation. So as our spirit is up, and there's a word for it in certain traditions called Devachan or Devachan, depends on different pronunciations. This is where we're in that spirit form. And it's kind of like we have a respite, a time of reprieve, a time of just being our incredible spiritual selves, fully connected into the allness, the oneness of the cosmic universe. And then we're like, okay, it's time to go back down. And usually, what I've heard over some of the ancient teachings is that we reincarnate through different civilizations. And so there has to be like a shift. So most often we don't come back to back, but we have lots of proof through other shows that have been out there that certainly people have come back. I think there's a whole show out there where children were talking about how they were in the war and they were a fighter pilot or something. And so there's a lot of interesting things that absolutely kind of conflict with this theory. So I don't want to say, but it's one of those things that I invite you to look for with, like out there. Go on YouTube and look at some of the other shows and other information that's out there. But for the most part, the teaching was that there has to be some sort of cultural shift. Something needs to happen, because we don't want to just keep coming back in the same type of kind of cultural scenarios. Now, we also can move from different places. We can be like, I'm an American this incarnation. I could be in some country in Africa next time, or Asia, in Europe. And so throughout what it is that we are calling to us, we're going to have a certain type of cultural dynamic. So if a person is very, for example, let's just even use the word, racist. If there's a person that's very racist in this lifetime and is very close-minded, then they might actually incarnate into a culture in which they may have, racism towards, and that they can experience what it's like to be within that culture and what they were judging against, that they lacked compassion, lacked whatever. And this is that very Ahrimanic energy I talked about in another show of judgment, where there's a superiority complex of I feel like I'm better than you in some way. So we can be born into a family where we're now at the effect of that, where we can then be, in a different scenario that's going to give us kind of like the opposite of what, our previous life was, to really understand what it's like for that experience. So even looking at the family dynamics, and we're going to just even looking at socioeconomics, statuses, being born into poverty. And of course, some poverty has incredible amount of love and support in, some different cultures, because that's what they know. We have a question. So the question is, hi, Daniel. Oh, I love that you're here. I'm going to just get my glasses on. Okay. So the question is, who's the adjudicator for karma and lineage, and who decides good or bad? So I want to just say that this is part of a law of the universe. There is no moral kind of ethic attached to it. It's all cause and effect. It's all action reaction. It's all that third law of motion. So what energetically we put out there, we in turn will receive it back to us. So in that place, we are the ones that are actually creating our scenario. And and so we're going to have all sorts of different types of scenarios, different types of degrees in which our belief systems have created some sort of imbalance. Because again, this is about freeing ourselves and freeing our minds and freeing of what we believe is good and bad and right and wrong, right? And so we're going to have these opportunities to experience life. And so in all from the teachings that I have received in many different ways throughout different wisdom traditions, really within this life, within this human existence, we rise, and we're going to have a show on this. I've been talking about this for some time. I've been really focusing on our human experience to everything around us, and then in a couple of shows after Ancestral Lineage, we're going to be moving it into the bigger picture of who are we? Who are we? Where do we come from? What's the whole point of being human? Where are we going? Right? Those really crucial questions that so many people ask about existence. And I'm going to bring in some different ways that we can see, some different creation stories even that we are not familiar with. And so some people would consider that the Christos Christ energy is actually the one who is the governance of energy, because that Christos energy, and again, it's that Christ energy. And Christ, so there's no gender. They come in, the Christ energy came into Yeshua or Jesus, through gender, but the Christ energy itself is a different type of energy. It's the love of the universe energy. It's the creation energy. So if we live and if we're in that creation energy, then we're bringing creation back to us. But if we're in destruction energy, we're going to bring destruction back to us. So we have to take responsibility for the energy in which we give out. And so if we see the world as, if we hate the world and we see everybody as, like perpetrators and bad people, then we're going to have the experience of the world coming back to us, seeing us that way, right? So it's like what we put out there is what we're going to give back. So there's that balance in all of that. So within that, I hope that answers your question, Daniel. So thank you so much for writing it out. And we're also going to take a quick break once again. And then as we come back, again, if anybody has any questions, you're definitely welcome to text them, write them out to the show. You can call in even. And we're also going to continue to look at our environment, how our environment certainly has shaped us and has provided multiple pathways for our life experience, right? So we're going to look at that a little bit more deeper and how that family dynamic begins to play out and how this really is the foundation of the energetic that we came into for this incarnation and how we're here to be presented with our opportunities to evolve. So we'll see you back here in just another couple minutes.
Did you know that your beliefs create your entire reality, but it's the subconscious beliefs that do most of the creating? Belief shifter and life coach Shiraz can help you identify those limiting beliefs and eliminate them, often in a single session.
Like it was almost instant, like I had relief right away.
Creating better health, relationships, careers, and finances. Let Shiraz help you step out of safety and into awareness.
Definitely something's happening. It's like a flow inside. It feels good.
Whether in person or online, Shiraz provides personal coaching, belief shifting. Visit Shiraz at energeticmagic.com or call 416-529-7429. Energetic Magic on the BBM Global Network, Tuesdays at 7 p.m. Eastern. Find your greater happiness. Be well. Be aware. Be magical.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of the Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on the Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
Welcome back. So I just also wanted to follow up on Daniel's question because he asked about the adjudicator for karma and lineage. I talked about the who decides good and bad, which is what we do. We decide that. But when it comes to our karma and our lineage, so karma, of course, is what we decide. It's part of our growth opportunity. It's part of us learning how to actually move ourselves into that higher place of beauty, of oneness, of harmony with our cosmic universe. And again, I also spoke a little bit about how this is going to be in a future show in a few weeks from now, probably sometime in October. We're going to go through September and then we'll probably hit that in October, is, some of these creation stories. What's it all about? And part of it is that we are these spiritual beings who are having this opportunity at this time on earth to really work with our ego. And our ego is that personality. It's that part of us that feels strongly about our identity. And this is part of our incarnated mission as well, is we get different personalities as we go through these different life incarnations that are going to help us kind of get that lesson, get that, like, have that opportunity for us to overcome, because we have so many different types of personalities in the world, right? And so within who's the adjudicator of that, when I talked about being in that place where we are back to spirit, this is a place where we are with our creators. Now, within certain lineages, we're with the very high realms of the angelic realms. We're with the seraphim, we're with the cherubim, we're with the thrones, we're with the keratites. Like, there's these different types of angelic hierarchies that actually are here to help us really move into our own understanding of all of the energetics and vibrations of the universe. And there's these vibrations that can certainly bring us down, and those vibrations, and there's a lot of fractals to this, by all means. And there's many ways to look at this. I've had multiple conversations about, low vibration doesn't mean always bad vibration. Low vibration can just have a nice long, like, cadence, but can be very kind of more densified. So it brings us into these denser bodies. Higher vibration can take us out of these dense bodies into more spirit energy form, right? And so we're going to kind of get into the whole light and darkness and malevolent versus benevolent, also when we move into October. But right now it's part of this angelic realm. There's also the words, the Elohim. And there's also different, source energy, God energy. We're going to talk a little bit more about that. But I just want to say that different traditions use different words, clearly different language. So it's in those places that's where those negotiations happen. It's when we're with the highest and the holiest of the holy benevolent energies, because ultimately we're looking at how do we become that high vibration frequency within the universe. And again, we have so many conversations about that. And I'm very much looking forward to having these conversations and just trying to give you just a teensy little bit of it right now. But it's in that phase that we're like looking at, okay, now I'm going to go back to balance myself. And so I'm working with these beings, all sorts of different types of beings that have helped create humanity in the first place. It's not just God, but there's this energetic, we can call it like this energetic team, and we can talk about fractals and all of this, where everybody, all of these different beings add different energetic components to what it is to have this consciousness. So have this consciousness. We talk about the physical body and the corporeal body of energy. We talk about the emotional body, the mental body, the soul body, the spirit body. And each one of them are so incredibly divinely designed, but we lose that information when we're born. We have to be guided by our own free will and choice based on our experiences. What are we going to choose? And that's why we have these multiple lifetimes. And that's why sometimes we may have multiple lifetimes where we might be playing out the same scenarios of disempowerment over and over and over again until we make a different choice. It's kind of like until we're like beaten down so much by this disempowering incarnation that says, okay, I'm gonna make a different choice. I'm gonna choose to forgive you. I'm gonna choose not to be mad at you anymore, or whatever, right? And we can shift that. So now bringing this back into the family dynamic, the environment in which we're born into. And there's so many different types of family dynamics. So even if we're like moving into, let's say we have to come in to experience our own oppressiveness from our last lifetime, or maybe we were cruel in the last lifetime, we're going to come into possibly a family where we're going to have some of that dynamic happening. Maybe there's some mental health issues that are going on that, there could be borderline personalities and stuff. And again, this is a whole nother conversation. This is where everything's connected. Everything we know about every science has some sort of connection into the greater spiritual process. So I'm just, touching on these things. Maybe there's violence, maybe there's incest, maybe there is, all sorts of things that are happening within that family that's giving us an opportunity to rebalance our own energy. But maybe we're born into an impoverished state that is full of love. And it's about, okay, we may not have a lot of money, but we have a lot of love. And that's going to create a whole different dynamic. Or maybe you're born into a middle class world and you have a lot of resources and you do have a loving family, but your family is also very opinionated. They're like, this is the way it needs to be. And so then you're like being governed by, in my opinion, for example, my dad was a very Republican and my mom was very Democratic. And so I had to figure out, some of the dynamics within the politics. Maybe it's religion. Maybe a person was born into a evangelical religion that they had very much like, this is the way. And if you falter from this way, you're going to go to hell. And so we have to learn, if there's a strong judgment of a way you need to be, then that is also the opportunity for us to find out who we are and find out what is true for us. Because what our families might be telling us is not the truth. It's what it's their program. They're teaching us their program. They want us to, be part of the program and follow the program because that's what they were taught. But we're waking up now and we're recognizing it's not that program anymore. It's about free will and choice. What feels right for me? What is resonant? What's coming in that says, hey, I was taught this, and this has so many discrepancies of love, so many discrepancies of kindness and generosity that I can't follow that. That doesn't fit me. And if it is something that a person, resonates with, when it also comes to, oppressiveness within opinions, judgments, like, oh yeah, you have to do it this way. And if you don't do it this way, then you're bad, right? Whatever, fill in the blank and all of those things. And we can see so much of that happening in our politics right now, right? In how even the religions are getting into all of that, right? And so it's like, if the person says, yes, that's right, everybody needs to do it my way, or this is the way, then they're going to have some lifetimes where they're going to have to be introduced to the fact that they need to evolve out of that mindset, that we all have to choose for ourselves, right? And so within that, and then let's say we are born into a family that is incredibly open-minded, who's incredibly spiritual, who's incredibly supportive and helps the children make, good decisions based on, them, like having them recognize the, the cause and effect of their decisions, helping to teach them to be good and kind, helping them to really know love. And we can have these in all sorts of different socioeconomics, different, areas of humanity. But it's about like when we have those parents are actually bringing the next leaders into the world because they're open. They recognize that humanity, we are the most diverse energies with everybody here to figure out what is best for them in their karma, in their incarnation, with the lessons that they've come to learn. And then even if we're all here to learn similar lessons, the alchemy that lives within our energy bodies are so different that we're going to have all sorts of like little, tweaks here and we're all unique masterpieces. Not any one of us is going to have the same experience. And throughout our different karma, throughout our different experiences, again, we're going to make different choices. We're going to need to be in different types of scenarios. And it's not for us to judge. We don't know what other people's carrying in their energy field. We don't know what their soul contract is. So it's kind of like we have this soul contract that we come into these families. And so even so, and again, we're going to talk about this next week, but we have our mother dynamic. We have our father dynamic. And some people may not have ever met their father before, their biological father, and maybe they had a beautiful, powerful stepfather, or maybe they had multiple stepfathers, right? Or, there's so many combinations of the human experience. So we can't judge. We can just we're invited. The invitation is to have compassion. The invitation is to recognize that, siblings and sibling rivalry. And sometimes that sibling could be, in the last life, an antagonist. That person's antagonist, the bully or something, from a previous incarnation that's now showing up as the sibling. Or maybe the sibling was even, that person's partner, lover in the last life. And now, your sister and sister in this lifetime. And I'm speaking from my own experience. My sister was my everything. She's no longer with us. And so it was so devastating to lose her. But she was like my number one person on the planet. We had such a bond with each other. And she left early. She left about 8 years ago. But it's like, I know I'm going to see her again. But, so we loved each other intensely and we're super compassionate and understanding with each other, but not everybody has that dynamic. And sometimes we have our siblings just be new beings that we're meeting for the first time and possibly even connecting, we could be creating karma with for the future incarnations even, because we can complete karma in one life, but we might be making new karma with somebody else that same life. So again, it's this ever evolving until we finally evolve ourselves into this, like the great spiritual teachers, the ascended masters. What were they known for? They were known for unconditional love, compassion, forgiveness. They knew that everything that was happening in the world was happening exactly the way each spirit soul was needing it to happen for their greater experience, right? And so this is a powerful piece to connect into so that we are recognizing that, that there is far more to these dynamics. And so, and we're going to definitely look at this again, when we don't have that father in our relationship with us, what does that then, let me just try to reframe a little bit here, because it's almost like, there's so many psychology terms, where when we don't have that masculine force showing up for us in that loving father way, how does that then impact our experience to the world around us? And this is when we're going to get into some generational karma as well. is where we are looking at, um, you know, of course, within like our grandfathers and possibly great grandfather dynamics, it was really about living a tough and hard life. And then they were tough and hard fathers upon their sons. They didn't give them the love and the coddling. They didn't want to make a soft man kind of a thing, right? And so many of those father son relationships then started to have some imbalances because dad was really tough on son, and mom was really tough on daughter, or vice versa. It doesn't really even matter, right? We can begin to see how some of these energetics begin to develop. Now, I just want to check in on time. So when I ask my engineer, how much time do I have? Because I lost the timing here. So my apologies.
You have about 30 seconds till break.
Okay, so we are kind of coming into the closure of this piece, but also just recognizing that even within the dynamics that we're actually given within our family dynamics, exactly what we need. Our family is our first environment, and they're usually the most important people for us to figure out what did we come in to learn, right? What is it that we are really here to accomplish in this lifetime? And so we can definitely see how some of these family dynamics are exactly what we needed from our personal karma. Our personal karma actually chose these families, these environments, the socioeconomic statuses, whatever the cultural, scenario might be, that's going to allow us to have a powerful experience for what we came in for. And this was our soul spirit contract. This is not our personality. It's not like, oh, I drew the short end of the stick. I got this really unfortunate life. It's really like, oh, I'm on this actually much bigger soul spirit trajectory that is being, and what I'm experiencing is things that I need to know so I can understand the full spectrum of the human experience and grow me forward. So we're going to take that last break, and I need a drink of water. So you do what you need to do, and I'll see you back here in 2. Thanks.
Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness: Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals. Listen to John Hawkins' My Strategy, Saturdays, 1 p.m. Eastern on the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio.
Okay, we cut that commercial short because we're running out of time. I went a little bit over. I had a timing issue, and so thanks for your patience. However, with the time that we have left, because we are going to be moving into family constellations, we're going to be looking at that family dynamic at a much more deeper angle and really kind of looking into the interconnections of all the different people that come into our lives within the family. And again, there's that blood family. And then there's also even our chosen families for those people who create community, and those families become their family. But it's also just important for us to know, as we tie up the rest of the show, is that our families were actually planned for us. There are opportunities. They're going to reflect back something to us. So I invite you to just, we don't really have enough time for a deep meditation, but I invite you to connect into that family member, and it could even be an extended family member. It could be that crazy uncle or aunt or cousin or whomever. It could even be, whoever that person is that triggers you the most, right? And so we're looking at how these family members trigger us, and because we need to see them. And so that family is that foundation energy. So even if it's during only Thanksgiving time, you know what I mean? Like, family comes together and you only see that family member once a year, this is that understanding of who is that person being that is providing you an opportunity. And what's the opportunity? When we're triggered, we're like, oh God, I can't stand that person. I don't want to be with them. And this can even be with parents and children. What is your parent, if you had one of those parents, what is your parent triggering in you that really is activated? And oftentimes it's disempowering. So we want to look at, okay, well, if I didn't have this dynamic, what would actually make that relationship empowering? This is where working with, an energy coach, with an energy healer could be very helpful. I've been working in karma for 10 years now. And so every time I work with clients, I'm working specifically on their relationships. This is their relationship to the world. This is their relationship to their life. This is where they get stuck. And it's not just with mom, for example, or dad, for example, or maybe it's even mom having this relationship with daughter, or dad having this relationship with son, or again, any different combination. It's like, this is our opportunity. How do we find the power? What do we need to do? Because when we start to make shifts in these areas, we begin to heal our family dynamic, and we begin to heal our lineage dynamic as well. And again, we'll be talking a lot more about this in the next couple of weeks. But again, I just want to invite you to connect into that person. And oftentimes that person is going to have a personality trait. What is that personality trait that is so activating in you that drives you crazy? And so that's the part of us. We can't change that person, but we can change ourselves. And so we begin to understand that, oh, that lives in me. It's not them. They're reflecting back to me something that's a little out of balance. If I don't have unconditional love, compassion, and forgiveness for them, then there's something for me to do still, because I'm on my way to overcoming this. I'm on my way to not letting that person bother me anymore. It doesn't mean that we need to support what they're doing. If they're doing cruel and oppressive things to other people and even to you, you don't have to, agree with that. You don't have to become their best daughter or best son or best mother or whatever. But we begin to learn how to love them and let that go. And when we can love them and let that go, and again, this is a whole different kind of energy, and I'm trying to talk about it very quickly here, and we're going to definitely dive into that more. This is where we begin to find that place of power once again within ourselves. And it's not always easy. I'm going to say it's not easy. It's the challenges, right? It's the big challenges of our lives. It's relationships. And, and whether, it's ex-husbands, ex-wives, all these different dynamics. And so even they are part of our family, even though you're like, oh God, that ex-husband is not my family anymore, right? But we called them in to be the father of my children. Now, I have a great relationship with my ex-husband for the most part, but nonetheless, there's many other people who don't. Most people don't. So again, these are these opportunities. So I invite you to sit with this for the week, bring it in for next week when we talk about family constellations. And I just want to thank you so much, everybody, for joining me this evening. It's always a pleasure. I love talking about this stuff. And I always encourage you to take what you've been given and play with it and add it to what you already know. There's so many ways to talk about this, of course. And if you like this, please give it a thumbs up, and you can even subscribe so it comes easily into your place of connecting in. And I wish you all a fabulous week, and I hope to see you next week. So take care.
This has been Connected with your host, Andrea Dragonfly. Join Andrea each week on an extraordinary journey, exploring the consciousness of energy and how you are connected. Thursday, 9 p.m. Eastern on the Bold Brave TV network.